Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend the Norwood League of Women Voters presentation on the 5 ballot questions. My name is Tony Esco. I am the League Membership Chair and a League Steering Committee member in charge of local programming. The National League of Women Voters was founded over 100 years ago when women were granted the right to vote in 1920. The League is a nonpartisan, grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure that everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, litigation, and at the state, local, and national levels, and with programs like this one tonight. And by the way, next month we have a confirmed date of November 19th for a meet and greet and presentation with Norwood's relatively new Superintendent of Schools, Timothy Luff, so you can find that on the calendar when that's live with the library next month. We hope you'll find this evening's program helpful as you discern the complexities of the 5 ballot questions. You should be applauded for your attendance here this evening because you demonstrate the importance of executing an informed vote. If anyone would like more information about the League, please feel free to provide your email on the sign-up sheet on the table, or talk with me or another League member after the presentation. Before we begin, some acknowledgments are in order. First, the League appreciates the ability to partner with the library on this program tonight. Partnership with the library allows us to use their website's online registration program and advertise on their calendar. It is a great help in getting the word out on our programs. The League thanks all the library staff who continue to show us tremendous support as well as technology assistance when we need it. Additionally, our thanks to Norwood Community Media for always providing us with a staff person to record our events, which allow us to bring tonight's information to a wider audience. After all, there are still almost 2 hectic weeks left before the November 5th election day. And our recorder this evening is Billy in the rear of the room, and we thank him for his time tonight. Now a few words about our presenter. Courtney Rogers is a past president of the Norwood League of Women Voters, and she is currently co-president of the Massachusetts League of Women Voters, and it's a busy, big position. She is also an active and informed educator and school administrator. We sincerely thank her for her time tonight. She will guide us through the ballot questions very, very well. Please welcome Courtney Rogers.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's just really nice to see this turnout. I know we all have a lot to learn and think about before we vote, so I don't want to take up too much of your time babbling. I'm just going to get right into it. So, first of all, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts has positions that are summarized in a booklet that's on our website called Where We Stand. I believe Tony might have a copy of it over on the bench as well. And Where We Stand is a collection of the positions that the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts has taken over the decades that we have been in operation. The League comes to a position by studying an issue. We gather information from all sides of a question. We develop questions for other leagues to sit and discuss, talk about the pros and the cons of every issue, and then we come to a consensus opinion about what our position on any legislation is. We also use those positions to guide some of our legislative priorities at the State House. The League of Women Voters has been involved in some very big wins with their lobbying these years, including the gun rights legislation bill that was passed at the end of last session, the Women's Reproductive Health bill that was expanded at the end of last session, and we just got the new climate bill through committee. And the League was very active in the new climate bill that just came out. So we take these positions because we have studied them, and we think about what is best for the community at large and the voting public, because an educated and informed public is able to vote for candidates and issues that are going to move the country forward. We do not support candidates, we do not support political parties, but we do support legislation that we feel is going to move the country forward. So that's where the League positions come from. So every year when there's a ballot question on the state question, the State League gets together, looks at the ballot questions. Our legislative action specialists, of which we have several, and we have chairs for each topic of bills that are on at the House, talk to us about what the bills are, and we come to a consensus based on the positions we currently have. So sometimes we'll take a position on a question, like we did several years ago for the nursing bill. I believe it was question 3. We were in favor. We were in support of the nurses in that, and we did educational and advocacy forums for those questions because it aligned with the position that the league held. But for other questions in other years, we've had no position, either because mostly because it doesn't align with the position we have, or in some cases, like some of the questions this evening, we don't have a position already that aligns with the ballot question, so we're not going to make up one on the spot. We're not going to rush through a study just to hold a position. So we use our existing positions to make informed choices about what we're going to help legislate for up at the State House, and what we're going to help advocate for the public. So tonight is solely an informational forum. As a personal opinions on all of these questions, once I take this button off, I'm happy to talk with those offline. But as the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, I'm here to give the bottom line. What does the league think about these questions? So there are 5 this year. Everyone take a deep breath, because we don't have enough on that ballot to worry about. There are 5. 1 is about auditing the state legislature. 1 is eliminating MCAS as a graduation requirement. 1 is unionizing rideshare drivers, limiting legalization of psychedelics and psychotropics for medical use, and then phasing out tipped wages up to, so that employers can then get to a $15 minimum for all restaurant employees. They're all very interesting issues. Several of these were citizen petitions as well, which the league had a position on citizens petitioning their government for redress and for legislation, and we support citizen petitions. We had a very big ballot question study maybe 5 years ago on whether citizens should be able to do that, and we think citizens should be able to do that. We helped lobby for that, and it passed, so now citizens can, if they go through the process, they can get a question on the Massachusetts ballot. Number 2 is one of those questions. That was a citizen-brought petition to eliminate MCAS as a graduation requirement. So the first one, which is probably the murkiest one, and I will tell you before I get into this, the state board talked about these over multiple meetings. We had a very difficult time coming to the position, lack of positions, essentially no positions on each of these questions. And there are reasons we took no position on each of these questions, which are upheld by what I just explained to you about our Where We Stand booklet. But then there were other reasons that we chose not to take positions on these. This was the murkiest one of all, because it weaves in and out of several state league positions that we uphold and are the core of our being, one of which is transparency in government. So question 1 asked whether the state auditor, Diana Zdoglio, who is the current state auditor, should be allowed to investigate the state legislature, overseeing and evaluating at least some of its activities. So the auditor already has substantial powers in that office, including like really broad court-supported access to all manner of documents and records, and particularly financial records. But there are limits to that power. There are constitutional limits, like state constitutional limits to that power. And question 1 would expand those constitutional limits on that office. So essentially a yes vote would mean the state auditor would be able to audit the legislature in the way the current auditor wants to, and she wants to audit voting and attendance records is one of the things she's specifically looking to make clear. It would add the legislature to the list of departments, offices, commissions, institutions, and activities of the Commonwealth. A no vote would mean the auditor's powers remain as they are right now, largely financial, like reports of what happened, but not individual voting records, individual attendance records, which is what she's looking to expand to go to. We are not taking a position on this question, not because we don't believe in transparency in our state government. We 100% do. We're not taking a position because the existing law doesn't authorize her to do that, and it might be unconstitutional. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, has said that in a letter that she published in November 2023 when this question was approved to be on the ballot, she doesn't have the authority to audit the legislator without the legislature's consent. So there are some things that she can audit, like the financial records and other things that, but they give her consent to do that. They have to give her permission to audit everything else she wants to look at. It also may violate the separation of powers doctrine because the legislature is not a department of government. The legislature is government. That might feel like semantics, but it's actually a very important distinction. It is not a department. Departments are managed by the executive, are managed by the legislature. They are not those things. So the legislature is its own existing branch of government. So it doesn't qualify as a department. So the Attorney General's office officially concluded that it was not. So this is why that question is murky. So we may remember that this individual campaigned on this issue about auditing the state legislature. She wants to get in there and really bring to light what's happening in our state house, which 100% needs to happen. We absolutely need transparency in government. The way that we do that is that we elect people to state offices that are willing to be transparent. So the current legislature is not going to give her permission to perform the audit she wishes, whether this question passes or not. They don't have to, and they're not going to. So that is the distinction. That is why the league took no position. Even though transparency in government is very much a core of what we do, the question is likely unconstitutional, and the legislature is not a department of government, it is the government. So that's that one. We'll do all questions at the end so that we can get through the information and then we can ask a little more freely. Ballot question number 2, eliminating the MCAS graduation requirement. This was a citizen brought petition, and it would remove the requirement that graduating seniors have to prove their readiness by passing MCAS. They have to pass the English, math, and science in order to be able to achieve a high school diploma, as well as complete any local graduation requirements that their individual district sets. So if they were to eliminate MCAS as a graduation requirement, they would demonstrate their graduation readiness through coursework that met the district's expectations, and every district has those. And they are aligned with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts graduation requirements. The Commonwealth also just has the MCAS. And which says they have to follow the frameworks. You have to meet the standards that the state says you must do this by grade 10, by grade 11, by grade 12. So they've been established by the State Board of Education. They've been in place for a long time. And they are reflected in the current MCAS test. The state frameworks are what is tested on the MCAS. The MCAS isn't testing what your child or your grandchild or your neighbor is doing in their classroom every single day. The MCAS is testing what the state says should be happening in their classroom every day. Now, local districts are required to choose curricula that matches what the state says you're supposed to learn. And generally, those match. However, I'm going to move on. We can talk about the rest of that later. So yes vote means there will be no longer a graduation requirement that involves the MCAS. You're still going to have to pass certain courses, certain math, English, science, history courses to be able to get a diploma from your town. But you're not going to need to pass the MCAS to get your diploma. It is not eliminating the MCAS. The MCAS will not go away even if this question passes. It just won't be a graduation requirement. The MCAS will still be administered to districts, and it will be used to see how students are progressing against the state-mandated curriculum, and districts can use that data, as they do now, to revise their curricula, revise their teaching practices, and see, what aren't we covering, what do we need to supplement, what are we doing really well at, so it will still be there. It just will not be a graduation requirement. A no vote on question 2 leaves the MCAS as one of the graduation requirements for the state of Massachusetts. It will be the #1 determination of whether a student is ready to graduate. What happens is if a student doesn't pass the MCAS, they have 4 more chances between when they take it in sophomore year and graduation day to take that test and pass it. And if you say you passed English, but you didn't pass math and science, you don't take English over. That's done, check, move on. You retake math, you retake science as many times as you need to, while it's generally given twice a year in retakes, until you pass it. If you don't pass it, you don't get a high school diploma. Even if you somehow manage to get A's and B's, even like passing grades in all of your coursework, that's what that means to the graduation. So even if you did really well in your C classes, if you don't pass MCAS, you don't get a diploma. So that's what they're looking to remove with question 2, is whether that should be a graduation requirement. But it's not going to go away even if the question passes. It's just going to be that information is going to be used differently. So, and this was a citizen petition started by a teacher, I believe in Hingham, and it's Hull, thank you to the gentleman in the back, and it is supported by the Mass Teachers Association. The League did not take a position on this question. Now, the League has a very specific position about the Board of Education, and we supported ed reform in 1993. And ed reform ushered in the MCAS. The ed reform was passed in 1993. The MCAS, the first administration, was in 1998. We support the State Board of Education's ability to make decisions about what students in the Commonwealth need to pass to be able to achieve a high school diploma here. We also think that schools in the state should be able to use whatever kind of motivation system they need to be able to get students to pass. We also believe in citizen-initiated ballot questions. And I will say that the league is a political but not a partisan organization, which means we don't support parties or candidates, but we are a political organization. We lobby for legislation, we advocate. We understand the political optics of the League of Women Voters demanding that students pass the MCAS. So although we support the Board of Education, we support ed reform, we did not feel that taking a no position on this question, because the no is actually aligns with what our official position is, would be beneficial for the political process in the state or for us as an organization. So we chose not to take a full stance on this, even though we could take the position of no on this question. We do not support question 2. However, we are not choosing to take a position at this time. It's a little bit. All of the questions, I will say that this conversation did happen in every single one of these questions. There are these, we spent a lot of time doing this mentally, because they're all really challenging. They're all really important issues for our state, and they all have really interesting implications of what our state's gonna look like if they pass or not. But overall, that doesn't mean that as individuals we don't have opinions about them, but as a league, the factual information is what we're going to go on. This is what yes means, this is what no means, and we are not going to lobby or advocate for either position, but we are all glad that the questions are on the ballot. Question 3, rideshare driver unionization. So right now, Uber and Lyft drivers are classified as independent contractors for the companies that they work for. And under Massachusetts, they can't create unions, because they're all just independent contractors working whenever they want to work. Question 3 would create a pathway for drivers from Lyft, drivers from Uber to create a union across those 2 rideshare platforms. It's called sector-based bargaining, so even though they don't work for the same company, they work in the same type of industry. It's why different hotel chains have the same union. And that's a sector-based bargaining piece as well. Like they're all part of the union that the hotel housekeepers work, and many of them have been on strike, but not all of them have been on strike. That's a sector-based bargaining. Some of those hotels are part of that particular union, some of them aren't. So this would be the same thing, sector-based bargaining. So they could get together and create a union, which would then allow them to negotiate for base level salaries, have higher base level salaries for rides that you take. They would have benefits from Uber and Lyft, like health and dental insurance and other benefits that you may get as an employee in a business. And then other protections that a union gives you, like protection about working conditions, protection about job security, all of those things that unions create, the rideshare drivers would be able to create. A yes vote means drivers across the platforms would be able to unionize. A no vote means they remain independent contractors and are governed by the tax laws that govern independent contractors, and also don't have job protections like a union would offer. This one was easy. We have no positions about this whatsoever. It is such a new thing. The league has not studied the rideshare industry and how it's paid or how it's structured. So this was easy to not take a position on because we don't have a position in our position booklet that aligns with it. So those are the three. I'm going to pause and take questions on 1 through 3 because I know 1 and 2 are probably the ones that you have significant questions about. 4 and 5 are interesting as well, but we'll pause if there are questions about 1, 2, or 3. We'll here. Hi, Brian.
Hi, how are you? I guess I'll start with question 1. I'm assuming if this does pass, this would be referred to the Supreme Court as unconstitutional, the state Supreme Court? Or?
So I don't know specifically what the path would be. But if it does pass, it will give the current auditor permission to audit the state legislature in a way it has never been audited before. They're unlikely to give permission. I cannot predict what the auditor would do, but if the auditor is very committed to that path, I would imagine, yes, she would sue for permission because the voters of Massachusetts gave her permission, and it would end up at the SJC. That is a likely path to that. Again, I am not speaking from any sort of legal perspective, but understanding what I understand about this process. So that's probably what would happen. Yes, Linda.
A question on the 2. So to eliminate the MCAS as a graduation diploma means that kids that might have some disabilities or something like that have a hard time passing the MCAS wouldn't get just a certificate of completion. They would get a diploma, so that when they filled out, so if they went to fill out a job application at Shaw's or Big Y or something that says, do you have a high school diploma? Right now, if they only get the certificate, if you use the MCAS, they would have to say no, correct? And
yes.
They could be denied the job. Whereas if you take this off as a criteria for graduation and you get your diploma from your district or whatever school you go to, then you could say, yes, I have a high school diploma, and they could be employed, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. There's a very small percentage of students that receive a certificate of attainment or attendance. The different districts call it different things. It is approximately 1 to 2% of students in Massachusetts. School districts spend a lot of time and energy making sure any kid that can pass the test will pass the test. This is part of the reasoning why the teacher in Hull brought this as a citizen initiative, that schools are teaching to this test and not teaching the students that are in front of them. But yes, a certificate of attainment or attendance is not the same as a high school diploma. So, and that tends to affect students with significant disabilities. It tends to affect, it disproportionately affects students of color as well, who might have challenging paths to stay in school, particularly like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. school. They may have family responsibilities that prevent them from attending school regularly. Night school diplomas is now solely a GED track, so they would get put into that, which is still a high school diploma, but it's not the same as the high school diploma that students walking across that first Sunday in June get. So yes, eliminating the MCAS as the graduation requirement would allow more students to attain high school diplomas without going through an alternate path to receive one. And I can explain those alternate paths offline at any time. I have been deeply invested in them for 27 years at this point. Hi, Carol.
Hi. As I understand it, this MCAS requirement only applies to children in the public schools. Am I right?
Yes. Any charter schools as well have to participate in it, but
like
charter schools are funded with public money.
But not like your parochial schools or your Xaverian or your
Nope.
whatever. Okay.
Parochial schools, other independent schools like Noble and Greeno or BB&N, the private Jewish day schools like Rashi and Maimonides do not have to participate in the MCAS.
So if they don't have to, are their statistics still factored into how the students in Massachusetts are going, or
No, they're not. The state only is reporting to public and charter school data.
Okay.
It does not report private school or parochial school data when it, like, how are Massachusetts students doing?
This says students don't need to pass the 10th grade. Is there only one MCAS, or is it given every year? Because I always thought it was given senior year.
MCAS is given in grades 3 through 8, grades 3 through 8, and then it is given in 10th grade, and that's the one you have to pass to be able to graduate high school. Many districts choose to give the science one in 9th grade to, like, take the testing burden off of students. So 3 through 8 is always English and math. Grades 5 and 8 also have a science in there, and then the 10th grade is math, English, and science. Many districts move to science in 9th grade, so you pass science in 9th grade, which also gives you additional time to pass it if in case you don't pass it. But you pass it in the 10th grade, and then that graduation requirement is checked, and then you spend the rest of that time working on your district requirements for graduating.
So do you have to pass one section to go to take it the next year? Like, do you have to pass, you know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th?
No.
You
No,
don't?
you do not have to pass it in 3 through 8. You have to, they track your progress.
Oh.
So they'll say, like, in 3rd grade you got this score, in 4th grade, like, I'm gonna do this many times and I apologize. Mostly to NCM that will be picking up the static. You have to pass it each year, but it doesn't prevent you from moving on to each grade. They use that data to maybe, you know, provide you intervention services, maybe you need, like, extra math support, extra writing support. Sometimes that data is used as part of a special education referral. You know, in addition to classroom performance, behavioral observations, not passing the MCAS in grades like 3, 4, and 5 might trigger a special education evaluation as well.
And the last question is, so if they don't pass in the 10th grade, do they have 4 more tries by
Yep.
12th grade?
4 more tries until 12th grade, through 12th grade.
So they have 2 years.
They have
to
2 more
take
years.
4 times.
4 more, 8, so, yeah, 4 more chances to take it. Those chances, from personal experience, those are shorter versions of the test of each one. They're not as long as the original test that's given. They're a little bit more streamlined. There.
Are these binding referenda?
They are.
They are.
So,
Could you explain what binding means?
so binding referenda means that you have to enact this as a policy or a law in Massachusetts. A non-binding referenda is a suggestion. And the municipality or the state could take it up if they wish to. Norwood has had non-binding referenda in the past that the boards that those non-binding referenda went to chose not to enact. They have also had binding referenda, like the override vote several years ago, and that had to be enacted. They had to go for these. So yeah, there's binding and non-binding. These are binding. Yes.
I have a couple of questions on number 1. The first one is, this voting yes for the state auditor to audit the legislature allows, it says, I understand, for the auditor to audit legislative records, okay, on how they vote, like how they vote on certain legislation, right? And also, it says here that it will shine a light on how taxpayer dollars are spent by the legislature. My question is, I thought both of those things are available, pieces of information are available already to the public.
They are.
We are, where's the difference?
The difference is in the intent, without elaborating further. They want to look a little more deeply, specifically at voting records over time of legislatures, and they want to look a little more specifically at attendance records over time as well.
But right now, anyone in the public could go and get this information at this.
Oh yeah, Mass Live publishes the roll call all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and the financial reports for the legislature are published every year.
Right, and the second question is, it says here that this would allow the auditor to achieve legislative, look at the performance of the legislators' goals in terms of implementing public policies they administer, okay? That's a lot of words, and I'm thinking, is that really saying how well they implement the laws, that the laws that have been already approved? Is that what it's hard language here to understand.
It's still, I am a
And
nonpartisan political
I didn't read
representative.
I didn't read
of an
the
organization. And the auditor's office is technically a nonpartisan office, although the person does have a party affiliation. I would suggest looking up the history of this particular auditor's campaign and how this person campaigned to sort of see what's behind that language. I keep focusing on voting records and attendance records. Those are some of the things that this auditor wants to bring to light. The vote count comes out every time the legislature takes a vote. Yes, no, we're present. You can go that, but it's not collated into one thing over the course of a legislative session. They publish it for each roll call, not for the entire session. So there, as of now, you could probably put it in an Excel spreadsheet and track it, but it is not published that way to the public, nor is there presence during legislative session. So that is part of what the additional information that the auditor wants to bring forward.
To follow up to her question, what would the auditor be doing with this information if she was given the power to have it? And how would it be used? Could it be used coercively or?
I can't answer that question. I don't actually know the answer to that question, and that I'm not going to speculate on.
Do you know if any previous auditor has ever proposed
No.
such a power? Thank you.
Joe Danucci is the previous auditor, and Suzanne Bump, the previous auditor, did not propose any legislation of this nature.
On NPR, Greater Boston show, you know, with Marjorie and Jim there, they said that the auditor, the present auditor, did the audit this week, but they stopped her from publishing it, the audit that she wanted to do.
Because she doesn't actually have as it says.
Right, and they said for all the reasons that you said,
Mhm.
that it's constitutionally allowable.
Yes.
As in the past. But she actually went so far as to do that audit, and she wanted to publish it before the election. I was like, wow.
That is all true.
Okay.
It's,
I'm upset, I just.
yeah, so it's one of the reasons. It was one of the driving reasons that the league chose to not take a position
Right, okay.
on this, because there is some partisan politics at play behind this question as well.
Okay.
So, and the last one, and then I'm going to go back to 4 and 5.
It's my understanding that there are public records laws like throughout the country, and that the majority of states, like, I don't know, 46 out of 50, let themselves be audited.
Right.
Do you know why Massachusetts is one of 4 states that don't?
That I do not know the answer to, nor would I speculate. It's a very interesting question, though.
Like, what would, I don't know. I guess you don't know, you don't.
I can't answer it, so I don't want to pretend to know that I do.
Do you know at all why some states are not opposed to it versus Massachusetts is?
No, I think it's the structure of their legislatures. I mean, there's some legislatures that have like single house legislatures, like Virginia, and others. One of the Midwestern states also has a single house. So I think it might be easier in some of those states to bring those records forward. But I couldn't tell you why those states have put those into their constitutions and Massachusetts didn't. Since Massachusetts was one of the first state constitutions, most other states kind of used it as an example. But I don't know why. We're one of the only ones. Let's go back. Question 4. Legalization of psychedelics. So question 4 is sort of like the marijuana question from many, many years ago. This is the first step. Many years ago when Massachusetts legalized marijuana, they did it for medical uses first, either for pain management, nausea, for cancer treatment. It was medical use only and you needed to have a medical card. This is similar. They would like to allow naturally occurring psychedelic drugs. So mushrooms, ayahuasca, things that you can derive from a plant and are psychedelic in nature, mescaline, to be grown, shared, used at home, offered by licensed professionals in a clinical setting. This is coming out of emerging medical research that microdosing with the drugs that are like psilocybin is helpful in the treatment of PTSD, specifically in veterans with TBIs and people with significantly entrenched mental illness, where other standard pharmaceuticals have not been successful in treating their illness. So this is step one in that, like, we legalized marijuana and then it became recreational. Right now, they're only looking to legalize psychedelic drugs for medical purposes. So a yes vote does exactly that. It creates that similar path. The drugs are legal in those listed situations. You could grow psychedelic mushrooms in your house if you had the correct license. That you would have to go and apply, like the folks that had licenses to grow marijuana in their house for managing their pain due to cancer or other diseases, glaucoma. They were able to grow their own and use for their own pain management purposes. You'd have to have the documentation. So the question, a yes vote, allows these psychedelics, this specific category of psychedelics. We're not talking about LSD. We're talking about the ones that you can get out of plants. The no vote does not change this category of drugs at all. They remain illegal. And we don't have a position on the medical use of drugs at all. Again, this is an area that we have not caught up to study, so we are not taking a position on this. We just don't have a position that aligns with it. That's the other thing about the league. We actually can't take a position on a question unless we have one that backs it up, or one that is similar enough that we have the foundation to be able to back it up. So since we have no position about psychedelic drugs or medical marijuana, we are not taking a position on this question either. And lastly, the tipped wages phase out. So question 5 would phase out the tipped minimum wage that most restaurant servers make, which right now is at $6.75, and then their tips make it up to like the minimum wage. This would require the employees to cover full minimum wage for all their employees in the restaurant, so that by 2029. So they would gradually increase that $6.75 over the course of years until 2029 when they reached, right now they're doing the math on a $15 minimum wage. Maybe the $15 minimum wage would be in place. Massachusetts is on track to get a $15 minimum wage before then. Maybe it wouldn't. Wait staff could still collect tips, but those tips, once this threshold has been reached, would then become pooled tips and get split between the wait staff, the back of the house staff, like kitchen, busboys, the hostess or host at the front of the restaurant, bookkeepers, anyone who didn't go and directly serve your table. Although the kitchen staff 100% directly served your table, they made your food. So this, it increases that wage so that they all have to pay the minimum wage. They can still collect tips, but they don't collect their own tips. It all goes into a pool, and it gets divided evenly among who was working on that shift. The yes vote puts this in place. Restaurant and bar owners can start phasing out that tipped wage requirement and bringing up their minimum base pay and begin instituting pooled tips. A no vote means Massachusetts keeps that current system. There are cities in the United States that are doing this. San Francisco is doing this right now. You may also have seen in other large cities, some restaurants are starting to add a kitchen service charge to checks, which is like a small percentage added to your bill that then goes and basically tips the kitchen staff, the busboys. Restaurant workers, those of you who have been a restaurant server, like you're often probably tipping out the folks that help you on a shift as well. So there's a lot that's happening with this question. This is another one where it was a fine line for us. We do have a position about meeting basic human needs. We do believe that everybody has the right to a living wage or right to make money, feed their families. But specific issues, this is from our Where We Stand booklet. Specific issues in relation to a living wage and income level should be decided by leagues in their individual communities. So we believe that before we as a state league would take a position on this, the local league should study how it would impact their community. Because there are towns, Norwood's got a lot of restaurants, so this could impact Norwood's economic base fairly significantly. But other towns, maybe Carver, more rural towns, Western Massachusetts, that don't have the same restaurant base that we do, their workers are traveling to other towns to do those jobs. That's going to have a very different economic impact on those towns. So the state league feels that the individual locals should study how that would impact their towns. So we're not taking a position for that. We do believe everyone is entitled to a fair living wage, 100%. However, we do not believe this question is how that's gonna, is clear enough for us to take a position on. Are there questions on 4 and 5? I have other things to share, but are there questions on 4 and 5? Start you.
So who brought forth the yes on this to change things? Was this the restaurant owners?
Owners,
Or was it
restaurant owners.
Restaurant owners, and what's in it for them besides?
There's more profit there. Although for smaller restaurants, these are larger chains. Like, you know, there are restaurants that are every city in America. That's sort of what's bringing this forward. Lewis's is not part of that restaurant organization. You know, the Common Cafe or what's the new one that's on Vernon Street now that I hear is really, really good.
Side door.
Yeah, side door. Those restaurant owners would be their bottom line would be greatly impacted by this, because they would be paying their workers more. Now, people deserve a minimum wage. People also deserve to run a business that is, you know, profitable for them and a good place to work for their employees. And restaurants run on really, really tight margins to begin with. So increasing the wages of all those employees, particularly for smaller restaurants, is probably going to have a detrimental impact. But we haven't studied that for sure, so I mean, I can't say for sure. The Restaurant Owners Association says it won't. It'll make equity for everybody, but the smaller restaurants that you've probably, if you've walked into a local place lately, you have seen a sign either for or against this particular issue. That it's going to impact smaller, independently owned restaurants a little differently. Go ahead.
So you use the language, it will have a detrimental effect. So detrimental to what degree? Like, why did you say that?
I've seen information from small business owners talking about they've done the math on how it's going to impact their business and how they're going to be able to pay people, how many people they're going to be able to hire for a shift based on how they can pay, how many shifts they're going to be able to offer during a day. If they're a breakfast to dinner, that's a lot of shifts, that's a lot of people. If they're only open for breakfast and lunch, that's fewer people. So it's going to impact how they're going to be able to hire. And if they're paying out more in salaries and they're only bringing in the same amount of revenue, they're either going to need to raise prices to keep the same staffing, or they're not going to be able to hire as many staff.
And what was that like effect that you saw for the small restaurants versus large restaurants in terms of increase in labor costs?
The larger restaurants, like, you know, your Chili's, your Rosa Mexicanos, your Ruth's Chris, those bigger chains, the profits are all there. They're buying in bulk for all of those restaurants, so they're negotiating the prices of their goods, like the food they're bringing in, at different rates than smaller restaurants. They can hire different people at different times. They can more shifts, more people, because they're just bringing in more money. They're also charging higher prices. Detrimental is probably the wrong word, but I've seen information on a personal level where they've done the math and like this question is not going to work for this small restaurant owner. It's probably going to work for a bigger restaurant owner.
And sorry, just I'm a little hung up on this. So you say the math doesn't work. So what is that percentage hit? Did they share that, or they're just saying it doesn't work?
I would have to go back and look at the specific restaurant. I do not have the specific percentages in front of me.
Ballpark, 5%?
I don't have a ballpark. No, I don't.
So, I have two questions on this. Well, not really a question, but when you talk about those bigger chains, like a Chili's, that's here in Norwood and Massachusetts, and then maybe in South Carolina, how do they rectify having like the minimum wage and tips this way in one state but not in another? How does that work?
It doesn't really, because the minimum wage is different state to state.
Correct. And also, if you're a waitress and you make your $6.75 an hour, or a waiter, and you are a good waiter or waitress, and you make, you know, $150 in tips every shift you're in, but the waitress, you know, that doesn't do a good job and only makes 20, why would you want to pool all your tips to, you know, make her have your money? I think, yeah, that's just.
So that's one of the reasons the smaller restaurants are putting forth as a reason they don't want this bill to pass. It's not equitable. for the individual people working for them.
Speaking for a friend, literally, you know, my friend, that's a huge concern, because a lot of the more established, you know, waiters and waitresses are totally against this, because they know this is their job. They've been doing it for a long time. They're almost professionals, so they get the bigger tips than, you know, Mary Schmo that comes in for 2 weeks, you know, 2 shifts a night, and really doesn't do a good job. You know, I mean, some of these waitresses and waiters know their clientele. They come in and, like, they know what they want before, you know, they sit down. People ask for them, you know, whose table, you know, is Bob's table available? I want to sit at Bob's table. So, I'm voting no.
And that's part of the reason that the state league thinks that locals should study this issue and how it would impact their individual community, because it is going to impact their individual communities differently. You know, there are different minimum wages in different states, and some of those restaurants operate in all those states, including Massachusetts. They might be able to absorb those costs differently. But Massachusetts is working really hard to get a better minimum wage. That is a commitment for the current, you know, governing body. So we're going to get there differently. This is the no position is this is not equitable for the people actually working in the restaurants. The yes position is it's equitable for everybody, including the restaurants. It's a tough one.
It's a tricky question about the tip pooling. Is that a requirement? And you had listed out who in the back of
Yep.
the establishment would have access to that pool. Is that also a part of the legal, or is
If this bill passes, the folks that are listed would
that's part of the mandate?
that is part of the law. Anybody working that shift participates in the tips for that entire shift.
Sorry if this has been answered already. Who actually put this on the ballot?
This one, I believe, was the Restaurant Owners Association,
Which is the larger restaurant?
which is a larger commercial organization.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to speak about question 4.
Sure.
And ask your opinion. It seems to me that the arguments on question 4 with the psychedelic commission, is deficient in the arguments for how that's going to affect our society and our daily life. It talks about some arguments, but it really doesn't expand it. For example, but it does say one thing in here. It says that, for example, in recent years, there's been 65% for driver's license revoked because of drugs, okay? Also 50% increase in crashes in cars, okay? What they're saying is, already we've had an example of, we know marijuana was passed, and we know there are more people that are drugs or whatever, and this is what's going on socially. But the argument isn't presented in terms of this. Look at, if we pass this, look how this could potentially affect our society. Such example, the workers in stores, the workers in banks, the people that we bring into our house that are workers. This is going to affect more people are going to be using this recreationally, just like marijuana, okay? And so, but it didn't really get into that, all right? It doesn't really talk about the social consequences, and I just wanted to bring that up. That's what it appears to me.
But because the bill isn't written for recreational use, the bill is written for medical use in controlled situations. You have to have a prescription, you have to have a license if you're growing your own, you have to have a license to purchase, or you even have to use it under the supervision of your treating physician.
And that's unfortunate, because there's another layer of what's going to happen with it, because we have marijuana as an example. Yeah.
Marijuana started here and then became legalized.
Right, I know.
Yes.
I just have a question about 4 as well. One question, part of that is you can grow your own and you can share it. And you grow your own, you can share it, or you could have it under supervision of, and then it doesn't have to be a medical professional. It's a clinic of some sort that people will run. It doesn't have to be a doctor. So what is the sharing part, do you know? I mean, if I decided to grow these things in my home and I could share it,
I think the sharing is the person growing is sharing for medical use. You can't actually, the question is not permitting recreational use. The question is letting therapists, psychiatrists, other doctors treating psychiatric and brain injuries use this for, this is the path, this is what they want to do. They want to use this to treat these really sticky mental health issues. There is emerging research saying that these drugs are effective in really small, like it's microdosing. It is not meant for you to like grow mushrooms and give them to
Yeah, I
everybody.
understand, but
You
it's
still
not
have to have the
scary.
same like dispensary license that the marijuana did years ago. You have to have the card, you have to be approved, which means you have to submit your medical documentation to get that card. Means you may not get it if they don't think your medical if they don't think the medical reason the commission that will be formed to regulate this would be able to do that.
Yeah, continuing on question 4, so what I don't understand is, so everyone can grow these mushrooms or whatever?
No, not everyone. You have to be licensed.
Okay, so, all right, so you're a licensed person, are you like a professional in growing these? Like, wouldn't everyone get like different doses? Like, I don't understand, like.
Well, yes, because everyone gets different doses of other medications. That would be, though there would be licensed growers like there are for marijuana, both back when it was first medical use only, there were licensed commercial growers that supplied medical dispensaries, and then there were people who were licensed to grow it for themselves in their home. This would be similar.
So who's saying like, what's a safe amount?
The doctor prescribing the microdosing is saying what's the safe amount.
But, yeah, so, but they're not growing it, they're just saying like, I don't know, like have a gram, and you're like, okay, I guess. Like, this is what I'm.
I mean, there are clinical studies you can look up to find what the safe dosage of psychedelic drugs is in treating mental illness. That's not part of the question I'm answering today. Here.
I think part of what's confusing about this is you keep talking about this is a pathway to use it, like in a more professional sense, but the way that it's currently written doesn't feel like that pathway is actually written down in the legislation.
They would
It's
have
saying
to.
it's legal.
They have to give a permission to legalize it, and then, much like they did with marijuana, then they create the commission, the licensing, but they have to have permission first. This is giving the permission.
And then the infrastructure for how this
Yes.
will actually play
This
out.
is not putting the infrastructure in place. This is
Yeah.
just giving the state permission to put the infrastructure in place. And then there would be people employed to do that.
And then if you're looking at marijuana as kind of like a similar pathway, like you had to legalize it first before the infrastructure got put in place, how long did that take? Do you know? Like
It took 5 years.
Yeah, it wasn't immediate. Like this, we get a permission, this is not happening by Christmas. This is happening
So, and
25, 26.
but that's part of my point is if you don't have the infrastructure in place and it will take years for that to be put in place, you have people who are doing this in people's homes. Again, like, yes, you can say like, take a gram of this, but you're not getting, it's not like you're going to a.
But the question isn't about off-licensed medication or what people are doing illegally to treat these people. This is, should the state create a legal pathway to do this because there's research emerging that this might be beneficial for people. We can't, the way these drugs are classified in Massachusetts, we can't create the infrastructure until we say it's okay to do so, which would mean decriminalizing it.
Are there other states that have this in place already?
Not sure. Tony?
I didn't think of this question until the conversation ensued. So, similar to the marijuana, if this passed, would this eventually lead to a need for, say, a zoning amendment if a facility wanted to grow these substances and create a medical facility zone, you know?
Probably.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that would be a zone.
Yeah, if a commercial grower wanted to grow commercially in a town to supply medical dispensaries, yeah, they would need to go through zoning, the whole thing. And those are dictated by local communities. They all have their different zoning and permitting.
Yeah, my question has to do with, I'm trying to sort out the difference between the personal and the professional. I understand on the one side, they're talking about a system where you go through, you're getting licensed to do it. But then there's another one that says you can grow in a 12 by 12 foot in your own home and share it.
But you've gotten a license to grow it because you've submitted documentation from a physician that says you need this to treat your illness.
Well, I get it, but you need it to treat your illness, and you've got a license to treat your illness, and you can grow it in your home. But it's the part that says, then you can share it. Are there any criterion that can say who you're allowed to share it with?
Not right now because we haven't given permission in which to do this yet. So the question is just about whether we're going to give permission or not. Again, the infrastructure is not in place. And the league has no position on this.
But I guess what I'm trying to understand is like, it sounds like the way it's described, they're saying, you know, if we give you, the law will give you permission, this is saying, we want the legislature, or we want whatever the regulations put in place that will allow this to happen. And I understand the allow this to happen if it's gonna be prescribed, if it's gonna be licensed, if it's gonna be taxed. The part I didn't understand was the part about your license in your home because you need it medically, then you're allowed to share it. That's the part that I didn't get. Like, you know, you're kind of like a license to get it for yourself, but is your license also letting you be a grower that you can share it in your home, from your home, like your 12 by 12 in your backyard? In which case, it's sort of like anybody can hang a shingle from their home, like if you want to.
That's not how those licenses work. They're for individual use. So the sharing is like you're sharing it for your, like you are sharing it, maybe you are the grower and you are sharing it for the person who has. The description of the licensing process is not in the question. The question is simply, does Massachusetts have the permission to begin this process? Literally, that's the scope of the question.
So I think just to address this, but also in order to grow it yourself in a 12 by 12, and it has to be 12 by 12, you have to go through a whole training position, and it's almost like a medical
Which has not been
process.
defined yet.
Right,
So
right, exactly.
We don't know what that's going to look
and
like.
get a license. But the sharing part means right now in certain states, like I know in New Mexico and some other states, certain indigenous tribes and homeopathic people use small,
Ayahuasca.
yeah, small things of this mushroom to treat sick illnesses, and that's part of it. So that would be it. And the people that, it's religious, it's like part of their religious background and their religious traditions. And that's what the sharing is about, so that if you're growing it and you're a shaman or you're somebody that offers this religious and medical treatment, that you can share it. But they had to put it in there because, you know, you can't, if you were a religious house and you did this, like an indigenous people, you would be shut right down. So it's really foggy, and they also don't tell you in here that a lot of this is being paid for by this huge pharmaceutical pact. So be aware and pay attention. This is not what it seems. You know, and also there's like I said, the religious thing, and the training is going to be almost medical to do it, and that's what these religious people are against, because they've been using it for years, and it won't. Their training won't go with whatever the law training is.
And again, the league is just
Right.
commenting on
Yeah.
whether the, we're actually not commenting on the question.
Yeah.
The state is asking, we
I'm
don't have a
commenting
position
on a
to
lot.
support it one way or the other,
It's
so.
it's a tricky question.
All 5 of the questions this year were
Right.
really tricky and had nuances that are,
That's why we're all here.
yeah, that are challenging. So there are some other sources of information that you can go to get factual information about the ballot question. One is, and this is a really excellent resource, the Center for State Policy Analysis, which is run out of Tufts University, has done white papers on each of these questions. Very detailed white papers. The League of Women Voters in Concord, Carlisle also had Evan Horovitz, who is the director of that center, speak on questions 1 and 2. If you go to our website, you can find a recording of that, those questions. And there are other leagues that have done other questions that you can find the factual recordings. Again, we're just presenting, these are the questions. Are Where We Stand and the related League of Women Voters United States impact on issues sort of will give you the background on all of our positions on a variety of things. If you want to take a look at the rationale that we use to come to these decisions, you can take a look at those. Those are really excellent readings. And then you can see all the sorts of the things that we've studied over the years. I will give you a little preview. The National League's study that's going to be coming out for state and local leagues to study over the next year is going to be on the federal judiciary system. So we are going to be, the league is going to be taking a nice hard league look at that. So. And then there's several over on the table. You probably got them in your home. The Secretary of State's Red Book is always like your first place to go to. It's again a yes vote. We've got some extra copies over there if you didn't get one to your house. But if you want a little deeper analysis with some research, the Center for State Policy Analysis white papers are excellent. They're free to download. I highly recommend them, actually. Couple other things that as a league person I would be remiss in not telling you. This is what the ballot's gonna look like this year. It's a mess. Because it's got all the candidates, and then it's got the first two questions in this super narrow column, so it's like squished in there. And then it's side 2 of the ballot. So, side 1, candidates, the first 2 questions, side 2, the remainder of the questions. Remember that it is a 2-sided ballot, so that flip it over so that you can vote for the questions. Okay? Just wanted to show you that to make sure you knew what you were getting into on November 5th. Here, specific to Norwood, here is just the town clerk's office. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There are there's 9 precincts in Norwood, hopefully you know all there are. You can still register to vote for the state presidential election. You have until Saturday to register to vote in the state if you have not already done so. Tuesday, October 29th, you need to get your mail-in or absentee ballot in. I would suggest doing it already because we want the Postal Service to be able to keep up with all of those ballots. Early voting is already in progress in many states. Mail-in, in-person, whatnot, so get it in as soon as you can. And then we are doing early voting in Norwood because it is state law, and the League of Women Voters was instrumental in getting that passed. We are still working on same-day voter registration. We are going to continue to work on that until the state of Massachusetts says it's good. But you can early vote at a Memorial Hall, which is the little hall off to the side on Washington Street at the town hall. This Saturday, 9 to 5. Monday through Thursday from 8:30 to 3:30. And then Friday, November 1st is the last day to early vote here in Norwood. And the last resource I'm going to show you is vote411.org. It is the National League of Women Voters voter resource, which each state has the ability to tweak to their state, so there's information on candidates. And you can also plug in your zip code and find out where your voting precinct is, who's on your ballot, and it will either redirect you to places where you can register to vote or check your voter registration status if you have not already done so. Yes?
Can you take your mail-in ballot and put it in a Dropbox, a ballot box?
Yes, there are 2 drop boxes at the town hall. You get where you pay your bill, the one in the front door and then one in the back parking lot. You can put ballots in there as well.
Could you please?
And then you.
Oh, could you flip back to the ballot? Because I had a question. I just got my mail-in ballot today, and there's a center section there where it has all the Blue Hills representatives, and it looks like there's like you're voting for for a candidate in Milton, a candidate in Norwood. Are we supposed to pick just the one that we want, or are we picking one in each of those categories?
You vote for each section that's on the ballot. You cast a vote.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Can you go back to that page where you had all the information about what
This
the
one?
drop boxes or?
Oh, this one. Sure. This is also on the town clerk's website, but I'm happy to go back to that.
It's very good.
It is very tiny. I blew it up. It's still not like the best. Yeah, it's.
A young person told me.
And then Vote 411 is a great resource. You can share vote411.org to your friends in other states. Just that simple address, and it will be specific to their state when they type in their zip code, which is a really nice way to do that. I think I've dropped Vote 411 in so many conversations on social media lately. Just here, take a look at what's actually there. It's an excellent resource for everybody. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. The League of Women Voters mission is empowering voters, defending democracy, and voting matters.